welcome back to another episode of TimeOut with the Sports Doctor podcast. And hey, we got another special guest for you this week. So let me introduce to you Mr. Kenneth Smith, also known as Coach Jojo, who reigns from Akron, Ohio. He is an author, he is an educator, he is an entrepreneur, he is a husband, he is a father, and he is also the CEO of I Am Possible Enterprises. So very glad to have you and welcome to the show tonight.
This podcast is brought to you by Zero Gravity Skin, a prolific leader in the aesthetic devices market, delivering anti-aging, complexion clearing, hair growth, and pain management solutions across the globe. Featuring the Perfectio X, a 2-in-1 device which treats both pain and signs of aging and is actively working to reverse cell damage accumulated over time. Also, the Relaxio, which provides damaged cells with the vital energy necessary to quickly renew and recover in the most optimal way. For more information, please visit zerogravityskin.com and use code Dr.Derrick30 to receive 30% off your purchase. Again, that's zerogravityskin.com, promo code Dr.Derrick30.
Appreciate it, Doc. I appreciate you having me.
Sure. So, before we get into this, I want to give a shout out to Shakeout LLC and the Athletes Unite Conference. I got her bottle right here in the background. It might be hard to read, but I want to give a shout out to Classy James for the workshop, not the workshop, but for the conference that she brought together. It's the first year doing this conference, and I'm shouting her out because that's how we connected, and that's why we're here now. You were one of the panelists and one of the guest speakers at that conference. And I was invited by Jonathan Jones, the podcast mentor who I work closely with. And he told me about it. And I was like, man, that's an awesome idea. I go to medical conferences all the time, but this was the first time that I'd ever been to a conference where athletes were coming together with health professionals discussing, business and mental health and making that next step from the game to life. So that was awesome.
Yeah, it was, man. I was so glad to be a part of it. I actually met Classy at a Final Four a couple of years ago. She told me about what she was trying to do. And I told her about my nonprofit and how we were just thinking about life after sports. And years later, to see her manifest that, man, be a part of it, that was special.
Yeah, no, it really was. And, you're the first person that I'm interviewing from this conference, but I've actually connected with several other people who will be future guests. So I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Okay. Yeah, man, that was a powerful role. When athletes get together, it's always a powerful situation.
So I haven't played football in, I guess, 20 plus years now, but, I get to be around the game through being a physician on the sidelines. So, I can still relate.
For sure. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So tell us about growing up in Akron. I'm sure people will say Akron. I know I've heard of Akron, right? Because of the king, right? Lebron James. But
for sure.
Tell us about how it was for you growing up in Akron.
Growing up in Akron, man, it was a pretty fun experience, to be honest with you, especially from a basketball perspective, man. So Akron isn't the largest city, but it isn't the smallest either. But my dad, man, was super involved in the community. And so, during the time that we were kids when I was a youngster, man, playing outside on the playground was, a big deal, and how you earned your reputation and earned your stripes, so to speak, from a basketball perspective. And so my dad actually had like the Premier League of Akron, Ohio at a park outside. And so, man, just being around my dad and basketball and seeing a lot of different things, man, seeing him give back to the community really cultivated the person that I am today. So I grew up, I have an older sister, a younger brother. Older sister ran track, younger brother actually bowled in college. So we did every sport growing up. And I saw a lot of community, man. I had two mentors. I had my dad and I had a pastor that were very big on community outreach and giving back. So that was a big deal for me growing up in Akron, man. So it was a great experience, honestly.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said it was an outdoor basketball league.
Oh yeah, outside, man.
Yeah.
We were not inside. If you didn't play there, You know, you're whatever you classified yourself or however you classified yourself, you weren't stamped unless you played in the Perkins School League. Well, because though it was
Okay.
a league dedicated, so my dad is from the old school era, and a lot of people may not know this name, but Gus Johnson, he's an NBA Hall of Famer and multiple time All-Star. But he's from Akron, Ohio. And so his brother and my dad were really close. So the league actually was called the Gus Johnson Summer Basketball League in memory of Gus. And so I learned a lot about the history. So you had LeBron before LeBron, you know what I'm saying? You know,
Right.
so I knew a lot of the history by being connected with my dad so much. And so it just made me kind of have a different outlook on basketball. And just to see LeBron do what he did, man, and what he is doing, that's been dope, man. Because we all grew up like, again, Akron isn't the biggest place, so everyone knows everyone, especially if you play
Right.
the same sport. And we like played at rival community centers, man. And so, you know, it's just funny how that rivalry still holds weight and things of that nature for the kids now that are playing right now. So it's been pretty cool.
So just speaking about LeBron, growing up in Akron, at what age was it when he started to get a buzz and people were saying, okay, hold on, this guy's a little different from the average kid?
I mean, you could tell he was different, honestly, when he was younger. But I guess to get the buzz that nationally was when he went to that ABCD camp. Um, that was when he really, really. That's the famous LeBron Lenny Cook story. You know, when other people started to find out. But you know, if you were around here and you knew who the Hoopers were, then people knew.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That he could ball,
Mhm.
and you know, you have different people who kind of are stamped from a standpoint of when you're looking up to older players. And so, yeah, so from a national standpoint, it was at that ABCD camp.
Gotcha. So you were able to play, not only in high school, but you also went on to excel at Miles College. Tell us about
Yep.
your HBCU days.
My HBCU days, man, were probably, I consider them the greatest days of my life. Um, I actually went to a school in New York first, right? So I went to Nyack College and I ended up transferring to Miles. I didn't play my first year and had a very unique experience in getting to Miles. But Miles was great from a standpoint of what I wanted from school. I wanted a full experience of college, not just athletic, not just academic. I wanted it to be both. At first in Nyack, I was in New York. It was more athletic. Like athletics would have been, I don't want to say better, but it would have been a different experience because it wasn't much to do there. There wasn't really a social life. And so we used to be like in the gym at 2, 3 in the
Yeah.
morning, right? Whereas when I went to Miles, though, I was able to have a social life that I wanted to have, you know, as a collegiate athlete and as a college student, but I also play
Right.
basketball. And so, you know, I mean, I think it was the greatest 4 years of my life. To be honest, I met lifelong brothers, my teammates that I still talk to this day, and experienced a lot of adversity, man. A lot of things that I had to like come back from. Like, for example, my first year down there, when we went to Christmas break, I was playing like a lot as a freshman. Even started quite a few games early on, and then I got injured right before Christmas break, and so came back, and so that injury kind of derailed where that season was going, and then some conflict between myself and my coach as years went on. So my second year, the first part of the season wasn't the greatest. The second half though was really great, man, and I was able to actually help us advance to the conference championship my sophomore year.
Okay.
We played in the conference championship, so that was my closest opportunity to actually making the NCAA tournament my sophomore year. And so just had some up and down situations, you know, dealing with my collegiate career. And that actually motivated me though to want to pursue playing afterwards, because it didn't go the way I didn't end on the note that I felt like I should end on. And so that actually fueled
All
me
right.
to pursue the opportunities that I pursued afterwards. So it was actually a blessing, man. So adversity is not a bad thing when you learn from it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you're on timeout with the sports doctor, so you can't just say an injury. You got to give us more details. What was your
Um,
injury in basketball?
what was my injury that like after college? What was my injury at Miles?
At Miles.
So my first year, I had a high ankle sprain, um, and it was right before Christmas break, man. So we played Morehouse right before the break. I started that game, and I landed on someone's foot, and a high
Mm,
ankle sprain is just worse. So then it was time to go home. Though came home, and when I came back, I just wasn't exactly where I was when I left. Then we had a new
right.
player in, and so we still made a really nice run when we got back. Man, we got on a really nice run, uh, and we went into the conference tournament. We lost in the semis. Um, so I mean, at that point, it wasn't anything drastic, but it was a high ankle sprain, so it just required more time and attention than a typical ankle sprain.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so, like in the reality of the college world, though, like once you get hurt and someone steps in, because actually, so we had a junior college transfer point guard who got hurt that actually enabled me to increase my minutes. And then I got hurt and we both had ankles. I remember us being in the training room with our legs in the same ice bucket, man. And so then my coach actually brought in another point guard who it just ended up being my brother, to be honest. But he did well, man. Go Nelson. He was from Montgomery, Alabama. He played high school with Ronell and Donnell Taylor, the twins. They have some history behind their name, but that's how the college world works, man. My coach wasn't waiting on us to heal. You know what I'm saying? It was like, well,
Right.
who's next?
Next man up.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was what it was, but it actually was, some lessons there. So that was um, the injury that I had my freshman season. And then like realistically, so at the end of that season, I had a lot of teammates, man, that like weren't great students, right? And so, but we were
Mhm.
so close. So I had teammates not going to class. And some small things went on. Like we ran up a high phone bill because we stayed in a basketball house, and we ran up a high phone bill. We were late to the team banquet together. Not purposefully though, but like when you're
Yeah.
not driving, like me, I didn't have a car
Right.
at the time, but we like
Yeah.
did everything together, and then so it was just my coach. My coach was very big on replacing people. To be honest with you, he's like he told our whole team. He said, "I'm getting a whole new team. I don't want any of this team back after this year." And but my grades were good. And I hadn't gotten any conduct individually. And so I'm like, huh? He's talking about taking scholarships and things of that nature. So it was interesting because only like four of us returned after my freshman year. A lot of people flunked out, you know what I'm saying, didn't have grades and things of that nature. So it was a very interesting climate, to be honest with you, from my coach in the standpoint. Then we had some assistants leave, man. There was a lot of turnover every year that I was there.
But see, these are all life lessons that now that you're a coach, that you can share with your players because
Oh yeah,
you mentioned a lot of things that had nothing to do with dribbling a basketball, injuries, academics, showing up on time, professionalism. And these are all things that can get you X and get your scholarship taken. And like you said, once you get on that bench, it's a lot harder to get back on the court, once you got on the coach's bad side. So,
oh
for the
man,
athletes listening, it's not just about your skills that's going to get you to the top. They might get you to the top, but they're not going to keep you on top
oh yeah.
alone.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
man. Lots of life lessons were taught along the journey, man. And so
Yeah.
they have to be lessons, or you're going to keep repeating them over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the part of where the process, right? You can't just skip the process. It's the day by day grind is where you really learn and where you really, separate yourself from other people.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So after college, you did a couple of years as a professional basketball player. Tell us, a little bit about that.
So man, that was another experience that was humbling. Obviously, I'm coming out of Miles, a Division II school that no one knows, and I come back to Akron because I did know some people connections, so to speak, or who knew people like a Jerome Lane. You hear that name, and him breaking the backboard, and we worked at the same rec center, and just some different people. So they're like, well, if you come home, we'll try to help. And then with the up and down situation of college, I felt like I had to try to play basketball professionally, or I would have been 35 years old. Like, man, I wish I would have tried. And so I hit the grind, man. Like literally, I came home and I was working at a rec center. And then I started substitute teaching, but I was working out 2 times a day, man, and just trying to be ready. I was going to like ABA tryouts and just trying to kind of find an opportunity, no matter where it was. And so what ended up happening was I was going to like ABA tryouts. Then the IBL league started. It was like in its 3rd year, I believe, in 2006, the year that I played. And so those opportunities came. I went to an ABA tryout in New York that actually kind of pushed me on. So I went to an ABA tryout in Western Pennsylvania, actually, right outside of New York. And I went and I played well. And I met a guy who sent me an email after the tryout saying, hey, you didn't make the team because of professional experience, right? Because I went up there and I played well. I actually had to go up there twice. I went to an old coach's, stayed with the old coach so I could play in the Kentucky Pro-Am. He lived in the Chicago area, man, just whatever it took to get there. But anyway, at that tryout in Western Pennsylvania, I met a guy and I emailed him about some months later after that tryout, like after I had the IBL experience. So then I had tape and I was a professional, and I had film of myself playing, and I reached out like, hey, now I have professional experience. I'm looking at what opportunities are available. Can you connect me to anyone, any opportunities? And what he ended up telling me was that there was an opportunity to get with the team that was going to tour, that was going to go to the South America and the Middle East. And, I could try to find a job and I would be able to be showcased in front of people and I would get paid to do that. And was it something I was interested in? And they told me like literally, like I had to leave like within the next 6 days that they would pay for me to leave. And so obviously at the time I'm single and I'm by myself and I'm trying to like chase this ball. And so I leave and got an opportunity to travel and play like against the Globetrotters, the Harlem Globetrotters. So and then the opportunity to go to the other countries, and trying to find a job and get jobs. It was an interesting experience because I was able to go to the Middle East. I was able to go to South America, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia. And I was actually able to see the world. And so I didn't really realize what it was shaping me for at the time, but it was actually shaping my experiences in my existence afterwards. So it was pretty cool, man, that to get that. I came home and again, the injury bug, I don't like to use that as an excuse, but I was playing in the league. I feel like I'm at the top pinnacle of my playing career, and I was playing at home locally, and I went to the basket and did a jump stop, and that was when I had a tear. Like I had to actually get surgery, so I had a double meniscus tear and bone damage. And at the time I was 24, so I graduated undergrad 22, 24 at the time, and I had given myself a 3-year window. I said at 25 I'm going to evaluate where I'm at and see if it's something I'm going to continue to pursue. But getting that injury and I had started substitute teaching, it just helped me turn the page onto what was next in education.
Yeah, so you mentioned, the substitute teaching, and that's kind of what I want to talk about next, is how your role as an educator, and as you mentioned, the basketball and the touring, how that played a role in your current career now. And then the education, that's another thing that kind of maybe took you on a path that you didn't really realize it would take you on. So talk to us about your years being an educator.
The Sabre training bat is like no other training bat you've ever used before. So the purpose of the Sabre training bat with its modified barrel is so that you can perfectly sequence and get behind the ball, getting the bat on plane sooner, creating less miss hits, more line drives, higher batting averages, and more exit velocity. The Sabre training bat is the #1 training bat on the market. Sabre Bats, the training bat that's going to take you to your best swing.
Well, so '06, when I played in the IBL, I wasn't making a lot of money, right? My contract was $75 a game. Real talk, man. So obviously I'm not living off basketball money. So I had to have a job.
That's less than a referee, right?
Man, yes. My best friend's mom told me to sub me. And I'm like, sub? I'm like, no. I'm like, I am not trying to be a substitute teacher. But she told me, she said, you love kids and you need some money. And so she was like, it's a great opportunity. And so a couple months went by. I really wasn't making much. I was working for the city at the time, making $9 an hour. And so by October, I'm like, man, I need some money. So I filled out the application. And the first time I subbed, it was an amazing experience. One, because all of the little black boys were walking past my classroom, peeking in my room. And in the classroom, I'm telling you, they were very, very interested in having conversations with me and talking to me. And so it sparked something. Like, I'm like, I could do this. At the time, I still didn't know or want to be a teacher per se, but it gave me that experience. Like, this is something that I could do. And so I subbed, and it was a great experience. And then a woman approached me and she said, let's switch. Before that happened, a former teacher of mine actually told me about a bully prevention job that the district was hiring for. She said they wanted specifically black males. She asked me, was I interested? I told her yes. And so I applied for that, and I was able to actually get that position. And so once that happened, that woman that I was speaking of approached me and she said, well, you want to be a teacher? And I'm like, no. Like, I love like the counseling aspect. I was in different buildings. And she was like, we'll pay for your, she's like, there's a program that'll pay for you to get your master's. And I'm like, So she gave me the numbers of a few people that had went through the program. She's like, call them, get their input, see if it's something you're interested in, let me know. And I talked to them and they're like, it's a great program. You should definitely look into it. I got into that program. I got my master's. And then I started teaching, man. And here we are 15 years later, having a multitude of experiences in education.
And you mentioned that you were able to connect with some kind of at-risk kids or kids that are being labeled as behavioral, difficult kids to deal with. And talk to us about how you were able to connect with them in a special way.
Well, honestly, I never went into those situations with those labels in my head. Like, I never went to the school like, oh, these are the behavioral kids or these are the bad. Like, they just were kids. Like, kids are kids, right, man. And behaviors are communicators. And so, I learned more of that in getting my master's. Behaviors are communicators, and I wanted to see like what the kids would tell me. So literally, like, I wouldn't even read their paperwork before meeting them because I didn't want to prejudge. And so I subbed at the school where I first got hired, which was the so-called worst behavioral alternative school in Akron, Ohio. So it was like the worst behavioral kids in the whole city. And I had fun. Like, I built relationships. I talked to students, but really I was asking them, like, about their lives and what was taking place and what did they need, and what would make their lives better, and just asking questions and then talking to them about like Akron because I'm from there. So, I could share the stories, and then when I was able to tell them where I grew up, and things of that nature, and they're like, man, and then they saw me, like, because of my dad and my Reverend Shai being so active in the community, like I was too. So they would see me at the store and at football games or walking down the street, like see me in the hood, like, hey, Mr. Smith, I see him more than in the building. So, they were living some difficult lives, man, and things that adults put in front of them that they, had no control over. So I just had a different level of patience and understanding of trying to help them get into a different space. So, that's always been my approach, man, is to have a understanding of where they are and just try to help them advance.
Yeah. So, you had a relationship with them, right? You were more than just a teacher. And once they were
Definitely.
able to see you, outside of the classroom and connect and say, okay, he understands us, he gets what we're going through, then they're able to open up and really be themselves and not just try to keep that hardcore mentality or hard outer shell that, many kids feel like they have to portray in a school environment.
Oh yeah, because so like I'm actually that's the book I'm working on now. But like kids aren't going to just open up and just tell you things about themselves that aren't positive, right? You're like, I
Right.
don't even trust the adults who have been in my life. So why would I just come directly in and start sharing these vulnerable situations with you? Um,
Mm.
you have to build up to that because it happens, but it doesn't happen in our time, so to speak. You have to let it organically just kind of take its course and let it be what it's going to be over the course of that time, and not get caught up into putting a timestamp on it. Like I never did that. I was fair, firm, and consistent, right? If you're fair, firm, and consistent, kids will respect it. And you got to have your boundaries. And I was human, and I allowed myself to be human with them, and we learned and grew from each other. So it was fun, man. We had a lot of fun.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I like that. Fair, firm, and consistent. And that's truly what, that's parenting, that's mentorship, that's accountability, that's can be that line transcends across many different fields. So yeah, I like that.
Sure.
And then tell us about your I Am Possible enterprise. Talk to us about that.
Well, so teaching. So I taught for a number of years. I taught for 10. Let me see, 10, 11, right? So I taught, and then I was a restorative practices coordinator. And when COVID came, so I love to read, I love to write. So I had written books about, well, how it really started was my daughter my first daughter, who's 10 now, was born. And I'm like ready to be super dad, man. I like bought a camera and a camcorder, and I'm like ready, right? And so reading was always important in my household. My mom was big on reading. So I went and I was trying to find books for my daughter that had protagonists that were Black females, and there weren't that many. And so being an educator, I started looking up, and I found out that like only 12% of um, protagonists were, less than 12% were characters of color. I'm like, no wonder I can't really find that many books. So I'm like, okay, well, instead of complaining about it, I'm like, I believe that the Black dad, the state of the Black father, is definitely, that story is not told in a positive light. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna write a book about being a dad. And so instead of just complaining, I wrote a book. And I literally, at the time, I'm still in the classroom. I was a restorative practice coordinator. I had no intentions of being a business person, right? But I released my first book, and God started talking to me and telling me that He wanted me to do more. And so my spirit led me to leaving the school district, which I just left officially this summer. So last year I took a leave of absence. But in releasing that first book, that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey and starting I Am Possible, because I am, for my believers out there that know that God is spirit, God shall be known as I am. That's told to us in the Bible. And so I knew the power of God. And so God was leading me into something else. And I released my first book. And so then I started that company. And then here we are 2 years later. I released the second book in February. And actually, my 10-year-old daughter released a book in February. She was 9 at the time. So we released a book together. My second book, her first. And so now,
Nice.
I was able to add my daughter as an author to the family, man. So right now, what I'm doing with that is I am offering professional development training for teachers in different areas, and I am offering speaking engagements, speaking about social emotional learning and authentic relationships for teachers. And then also my story of being, a former athlete that transitioned into life after sports. So the sky's the limit, man. We're going to continue to do this thing, but now I'm an independent contractor, and God wanted me to share my voice around the world. So it's been a
That's
pretty
awesome.
interesting roller coaster so far, but it's helped me to be a better me.
Sure, sure. So don't you love that feeling when you feel like you're doing enough and then God says, I want you to do more?
Man,
Like,
it
hold
was
on, you
like,
talking to me? Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, huh? Like, you want me to do what?
Yeah.
Because my kids were growing, my wife, we were like established, so to speak. We both had careers, and I'm already giving back, and but I was so entrenched, and I still am in Akron, Ohio. Like, right, like I am a fierce leader, in Akron, Ohio right now. But basically, God was just telling me by sending me around the world, like you could still be a great leader in Akron, Ohio, and not be limited to Akron, Ohio. And so that's what I really I had to come to realize, that like God wants me to share my story with people around the world. And so that's where we are.
Sure, sure. So, and you mentioned that you started this in 2020, I think. So you started this
Yes.
at the beginning of the pandemic. So how has the pandemic, has it been a hindrance to you, or has that been something to kind of be a catalyst for you as far as growing your business and being able to speak around the world?
Well, it was kind of, I guess you could say it was a hindrance from a standpoint of I wasn't able to. Oh, it was a learning lesson, but a hindrance. So neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I was scheduled to go to Florida because I know a former person that I went to college with who scheduled me, connected me to Florida. I was going to go to Florida, and I actually connected my children's books to social emotional learning. And so, being a Black author, I was going to have that experience. But then COVID spiked again at the time that I was going to do that. And so districts were like, oh, we're not having in-person visits. And at the time I wasn't doing anything virtual because, it takes away from the connection, in my opinion. And so it's like, okay, I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do at the time. And I was just still on leave, trying to kind of fill it out, get my feet wet. I was doing some local districts here, and I did some professional development. And so um, it just was a learning experience, but it did
Yeah.
hinder me from traveling and going to some different places. Whereas now, I believe like this coming school year, the traveling opportunities are going to present themselves a lot better. Although there's a lot going on, kind of still, like COVID is not gone, but
Right.
yeah. So it was
Right.
a hindrance at the beginning, but I just look at it. It really was teaching me a lot of the things that I needed to learn, really, honestly, man. So, you can
Yeah.
look at it like, tomato, tomato, glass half full,
Sure.
half empty, so to speak.
Yeah, I asked because, for many people, it was a time that the world kind of slowed down and allowed you to do a lot of kind of introspective learning about yourself, or, maybe develop ways to present a course or present even speaking on a virtual platform, which
Hmm.
allowed you to be in Dubai at 1 minute and, in Florida a couple hours later. So I was just wondering if that had been an experience for you.
Yeah. So I just learned a lot, to be honest. And now
Yeah.
I'm using those experiences to propel me into where I'm going now. And I see a lot of bright things coming in the future. So I'm really excited to where this thing is headed.
Sure, sure. All right, perfect. So on Timeout with the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So, your career has been a stepping stone. One thing, you start off on one level and you get an experience and you take it to another level and you just continue to learn and grow and build on that. So, speak to a young athlete or an entrepreneur who's got ideas, but, they can't really see the finish line and they're maybe not able to start because they don't know what the finish looks like. So just speak to someone about how, faith and how just getting started, how important that is in your career.
Faith definitely is a huge portion, right? And so for me personally, again, spirituality was always something that it was a part of my life and a big part of my life. And so I always knew that life was deeper than the surface of what we are seeing in these eyes. And so we are all here for a purpose. And so the advice that I would give to an up and coming athlete from that standpoint is, um, I feel like you need to believe in something larger than yourself, but that something is actually inside of you, right? It's not something you have to go search for and it's outside, and it's something that is within, and it actually brings you like a feeling. You can feel it. It's not something that like you'll know what this thing is because you have a certain feeling when you're doing it, when you're around it. And so when you get that tug is what I call it. When you feel that tug, if you're able to be still and listen to the inside versus what everyone is saying you should do. Like for example, like majority of people like, well, don't quit your job. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but the tug that God was leading me on was that. So you have to have faith, right? That's what I'm getting into. You have to have faith in something that's larger than you. And then once you have faith and your spirit is leading you to a path, then you have to trust that spirit. You got to go for it, man. You literally have to go for it. Now, going for it doesn't necessarily mean quit your job, right? I'm not saying that, but it does mean you have to sacrifice as you did if you were a former athlete and you had to sacrifice for the team or whatever you had to do to get the ultimate goal. You have to figure out what that is and then start putting yourself in position to take advantage of those opportunities. Because when you have a passion about something, you won't feel like, oh my goodness. Like I don't ever wake up like, oh man, like, I'm going to help other people learn about education and things of that nature. Like that is something that is inside of me. So once you figure out what that is, I say go for it. And there is no good or bad, just results. You learn from them and you move on.
Absolutely. And then one more thing, because you are the CEO of I Am Possible Enterprise. So talk to us about the strength of I am statements.
Oh man, I am are the most powerful words in the world. And so I have always known that, right? I grew up in a church called Children of the I Am. So I am awareness for me is literally how I grew up. And so having that foundation was big for me, but also knowing that like whatever you put behind I am literally will come like haunting you. If it's negative, like if you just say I am and putting negative behind it, then, it will be that. And so understanding that at a young age for me, honestly, has been golden in my life now because I know that those words are very powerful. And so your subconscious mind never sleeps. So you got to be careful about what you say, speaking things into existence. So for me personally, I just know that I am statements are very powerful and they should be spoken daily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on. And for the listeners, please tell them how they can follow you and also where they can get your books that you mentioned.
If you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on IG and Twitter at Akron Coach _Jojo. That's JOJO, no E's. That's IG and Twitter at Akron Coach _Jojo. I have a website that is my personal website. It is IamPossibleEnterprise.com. So you can go to my website. And when you go to my website, you'll be able to get linked to my store, our online store, where it's going to have my book and my two books and my daughter's book. Nice. So you'll be able to link with me that way. So I'm on Facebook too and LinkedIn, Kenny Jojo Smith on those two. But so it's a lot of ways to connect with me. But if you follow me on social media, then you'll see. And I actually do like something called morning motivations, little 15-minute ways to start your day off right in the morning. So if you follow me, you'll be hip to those as well.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the work you're doing. And I wish you the best as you continue to grow and impact the world through, motivating people.
Oh man, thank you. I appreciate you for having me. And yeah, man, we just got to continue to do this one day at a time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, subscribe so you continue to get the updated episodes. Until later, peace. TimeOut with the sports doctor. Keep our head right in the game. We ain't never stopping. You are now tuned in. Trust you don't want to miss. This is where life, sports, and medicine